Shalom Aleichem, a good Erev Shabbos, Pashas Lech Lecha. Been lept with Avram Avinu the entire week. It's a freiliche week, a happy week. Yesterday, Yud Aleph Cheshvan, was the Yortzeit of a Chassid, Reb Shmuel Betzalel Althaus, who was from Nikolaev, Russia originally, and then lived in France, and from there came to Australia together with four other Chassidim who were the individuals who helped establish the Anash community, although the one who sponsored them was Reb Moshe Feiglin. He was the first father Lubavitcher figure in Australia. So l'schusai, I would like to share a little bit what he told me when I married my wife, who was Reb Chaim Serebransky's daughter, in 1984, and I met Shmilik. They called him Shmilik, Reb Shmuel Betzalel. I met him and spent time talking with him and listening to his nigunim from Nikolaev, and it made a very indelible impression. But how did he even come to Australia? And the story that is told is that Reb Moshe Feiglin needed a sheichet, a melamed, for the children in the greater Melbourne area. It was called Shepparton. That was the area where they had farms and orchards, and he owned some of those. And he needed someone to teach the Kinderlach. So he wrote to the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe suggested to Reb Betzalel Vilshansky. This is the Zayde of Reb Zalman Vilshansky and Reb Yosef Yitzchak Vilshansky. The Vilshanskys, the three brothers, and the father was Reb Foley Vilshansky, who passed on. And there's a Vilshansky son who is in Melbourne, lives there in Melbourne today. Anyway, it's their father, Tzalke Vilshansky, they called him. I think they also called him in Lubavitch Tzalke Charsener. He came from Kherson. Anyway, so he was asked by the Moshe Feiglin to be that person, to come from France. He lived at the time in France in the 40s, in mid-40s, and to come to serve, and he'll pay him. So he asked the Frierdiker Rebbe, and a letter came one day, 48 or 44, so sometime during that time, that to address the Vilshansky. Shmilke Betzalel Althaus saw the letter, so he quietly took the letter, he opened it up, and he saw what it said there, and it said that he should take the job in Australia. He then sealed the letter back, he steam sealed it back, put it back, and Vilshansky had no idea that Shmilke Althaus saw the letter. If you knew Reb Shmuel Betzalel and you didn't know the Althauses, they have a cleverness and a sharpness and a freilichkeit and a wittiness to their personality. And this type of trick and this type of a prank is something that's definitely was up his alley, for a good purpose, of course. So he went around trying to get other Lubavitch Chassidim who were looking, everyone was looking, to move either to Eretz Yisrael or to America. And he came up with the idea, if it's good enough for Vilshansky, why isn't it good enough for myself and others? But I need a few others. I don't want to be myself, So he went around and he got Gurevich and Serebransky and Kluvgant and Pliskin to go with him to Australia, I believe. I believe those are the four. Maybe I'm missing one. Anyway, that's how they got to Australia. This Shmuel Betzalel was a business person, a businessman. He was not in Klei Kodesh, but he was a Nikolaever. Just to describe to you what it means to be a Nikolaever Chassid, which the Rebbe's Zayder, Meir Shleima Yanovsky, the Rebbe Tzimchana's father, they were Nikolaever for for generations. The heart of the Nikolaevers. Their heart was gold, was warm. Rabbi Yoel Kahn told me once that when a chassid would return from the Rebbe, from the Rashab, or the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he lived in Kremenchuk, in the Ukraine, Kremenchuk, he would say, they would ask him, what maimah, what divrei maschil did the Rebbe say? What divrei maschil? And when a chassid came back, a chassid from Nikolaev went to the Rebbe, they would ask him, was macht the Rebbe, how's the Rebbe feeling? So one sees the difference between the two. Kremenchuker with the Maskilim, the Goraris, and the other Berlach, as we know, and the Nikolaev Chassidim, the Charetonovs, the Yanovskis, and the Althauses. They were all from Nikolaev. They were very warm Chassidim. And Shmuel Betzalel was this type of person. So when I married, I was there in Australia for several weeks, and I met still of some of the Chassidim who were alive. And I remember it was midweek. It was in the Sheva Brachas, the 7 days after the marriage. And you know that what's there to do? At night you have Sheva Brachas, and during the day you can daven, you can learn. So I davened a little in shul, and a new chassan, a new younger man. So I davened a little longer, and I saw once this chassid there, Reb Shmuel Betzalel. So I went over, said Shalom Aleichem, and I told him, I hear you're a big Baal Menagin, sing a niggin. And he sang a niggin, and he started to cry with tears, just from singing a niggin. And it made such an impression. A Yid, in the middle of the week, verdweket sich in a niggin, you know, he goes into a different planet. He's not here. And his neshama comes out. He also told me that you should know, I'm not a chassid of the Rebbe, I'm a friend of the Rebbe. At the time, I didn't understand what it meant, really. But years later, Rabbi Yoel Kahn told me, after I read I think Chelik Tazayin of the Frierdiker Rebbe's Igros Kodesh, the famous letter that Rebbe L'chaim Althaus wrote to the Frierdiker Rebbe about Tishrei Tofresh Tzadik, 1929 in Riga, when the Rebbe was in America. So he gave a report of what happened in Riga in the Rebbe's hoif, in the Rebbe's chotzer, in the Rebbe's house and the shul. And he spoke about our Rebbe. If you haven't read this letter, it's a must. You must read this letter, because it will show you our Rebbe was the same tzaddik and Rebbe with all aspects of Chassidishkeit and Lubavitch in 1929 as he was in 1950 and 1970 and 1990. And Bekitzer, I asked Rabbi Yoel, it was the first time I read this letter, and I was blown away. So I asked Rabbi Yoel, was sagt wegen the brief? And he was aware of the brief, of course, of the letter, and he said, gewinn a gute Freund. He was a good friend. And Rabbi Yoel opened up for me the first time my understanding that there's something besides being a chassid, a makusher, there's a Freund of the Rebbe, a friend of the Rebbe. And the Althauses were friends of the Rabbeim. Binyamin Althaus, that was Shmuel Betzalel Althaus' son, told me that he thinks why the Rabbeim were very makarev the Althauses, and the Althauses felt so friendly with the Rabbeim. It's because during the time of the Reb Marash, when the other brothers and other Chassidim couples, and Liadi and Yezhin and all that, there was a big sichsuch, a big disagreement, and people were going here and there. And Lubavitch, Reb Marash had the least of the Chassidim. There were several families who stood fast for the Rebbe Marash, and one of them were the Althauses. So he said, Binyamin said, Binke, they called him Binke, Binke said to me that the reason why he thinks that they had such a kiro from the Rabbeim is because his family were on the forefront fighting for the Rebbe Marash. B'schusai, in his great merit, the Rebbe Shmuel Betzalel, the Nigunim we have, the Volachs, we have a tradition, a rich tradition of Chabad Nagina that came from the Althauses, together with the Charetonovs, together with the Yanovskis, and Rabbi Sai, it's Lech Lecha, the fall is here, The winter follows. It's time to sing the Chassidish Nigun at your table with your children, your grandchildren, with your wife, even if you're by yourself. This is our Messiah. Lubavitch Chabad Nagina. May Hashem help that we all have a Gavaldige Shabbos and see the Rebbe and Klal Yisrael together with us. Tchias Amesim Bekorev Mamish in Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, Yira Kodesh. Amen v'Amen.